and welcome back to the Breakroom. I'm your host today, Brandon Barrick, and we're talking about the DCU's newest movie, The Flash. But I'm not the only one here today. Sitting right next to me, it's Gina Ippolito.
Hi, everybody.
I said Ippolito, didn't I?
I practiced. It sounded right.
I practiced. And at the end of the table, we have Hector Navarro.
I think it's still technically the DCEU, I think.
You
This
think?
one?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're still in the DCEU.
I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Spoil it.
There's spoilers, we'll talk about it, because that relates.
Yeah, who's going to spoil it for you? Well, we got Coy Jandreau.
I hope you clicked this button for a reason, because we're going to say everything we need to say.
That's right. That's right. We are going to be talking about The Flash today. Spoiler heavy. We've all seen it. Have you seen it yet? I hope so. If you haven't, you can pause this video, go see it, and come back and watch it later, either here on Twitch, or we're going to upload this whole video to YouTube on our Breakroom channel. Make sure you subscribe to us there. But we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about everything we saw in the movie, what we liked, what we maybe liked less, all the fun things about The Flash, Speed Force included. By the way, if you didn't know already, Secret Invasion is coming, which means our in-depth Marvel analysis is back, baby. Eric Voss's Easter egg breakdowns are coming out on Wednesdays now, around 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, other parts of the world, on our main new Rockstars channel. We're going to get these breakdowns out on Wednesday, folks. You're not going to have to wait as long as you've had to wait in the past. It's going to be hot. It's going to be awesome. This show is filled with conspiracies, research walls, signs in Russian, so many crazy details. You're not going to want to miss what Eric has found. Make sure you tune in for those.
He learned Russian. He learned Russian for you people.
Yeah.
In depth. I was waiting to say that shirt's great until we talked about Secret Invasion. It's a great shirt.
We got some
I just wanted
great
to give it
shirts.
some love.
We'll talk about these shirts in a minute.
Okay. But it's great.
But right now, we got to talk about The Flash, okay? Now, if you've tuned in for these reviews before, you know how it's going to go. We've got 5 categories we're going to look at. Those categories include the story, which is like the script and the writing, okay? We're going to talk about the visuals of the movie.
Oh,
this isn't a book.
How it looks.
It's a movie, what we saw, what our eyeballs ate. We're going to talk about the acting in this film. We'll talk about the directing. And our 5th category will be the sound and the music.
Great.
Sound and Fury.
And the sound of music. Each category, you'll give a score 1 through 5. We'll save our scores for the end of each category. You can give a half score if you want. I'm fine with that. I petitioned to be able to give 10th scores.
You're the
like a letter
worst.
grade.
But I was shut down.
I team that, but it is a lot of math.
It is a lot of
Rightfully
math.
so.
It is a lot of
Rightfully
math.
so. But viewing audience at home can do 1/10.
You can do whatever you want at home.
We can't control what you're doing.
Right. And as we go through these categories, if you have your own thoughts, if you've got your own questions, drop them in the chat. Folks, they're making me monitor the chat myself today.
Whoa.
So be nice to me.
Multitasking.
I'm gonna look as much as I can.
A lot of colors
Try and
there.
catch your
A lot going
questions.
on.
A lot of colors.
We might even have questions about the movie pertaining to like the rules of the Speed Force, why some's yellow, why some's blue. If
Yes.
you have questions like that and you happen to have an answer and you're not a snarky jerk, let us know in the chat.
Yeah.
Too,
Figure
if
it
there's-
out for us.
Figure it out for
Now,
us.
if anyone here on the panel has a question, please put it into the chat.
You got
Okay,
it.
let me just take
Yeah.
the phone
Can I lean
out.
over and do it from there?
Yeah.
You can't do it for here. For instance,
receive.
Donkey Teeth Bites says, I came here for spoilers, not math.
That's fair. That's why I feel.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good because I'm not good at math, but I'm great at
Great
spoilers.
at spoilers.
Oh, Sarah Hatchadorian
I'm the
saying
opposite. I'm
hello.
great at
So many
math.
people saying
Spoilers,
hello.
less so.
Hi,
Brian
everybody.
Painter saying hello. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with our first category, the story, which includes the script and the writing of this film. Who wants to start by talking about the story?
I wanna
Hector
start.
seems so
You
ready.
took a deep breath.
I saw that.
Hector took a deep breath.
Punched
Because
expectations.
you guys can't watch this, but we're not revealing our scores until the end of this little discussion.
Correct.
But
So
in
funny.
the teleprompter here, all of our scores are already up, and mine is the lowest.
Okay.
I have a feeling for every one of these categories, my score might be the lowest.
Oh, no.
I feel real bad. When I sent this to producer John, when I sent my scores, he's like, I'm gonna need your scores in all these categories. And I texted him. John was like, I love you, Hector. This is gonna be a great episode. I was like, oh, okay, all right. But John hasn't seen the movie, to be fair. He hasn't seen it yet. I'm putting him on blast.
He's
but
just a grumpy man.
He's
who
just a
likes
grumpy-
He
low
appreciates the
scores.
numbers,
he likes
whether or not they know them.
So my biggest problem with the film, I think, is elements of the script and the specifics, but overall the kind of the story. I've seen people discuss the ending where the theme is kind of saying, like, it's basically an anti across the Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse had Miles Morales being like, no, I don't have to let my loved ones die just because it's a rule of comic book tropes or whatever, like just because it's a meta-narrative.
Right.
I want to try and be a superheroic person and try to like change, like you trying to tell me how to live my life, I'm gonna do my own thing. That's Miles' whole storyline. The Flash ends with a bunch of older guys who made this movie and Michael Keaton and, you know, and the rules of the universe kind of telling young Barry Allen, like, you can't. You have to let your mom die. And Barry is like, yeah.
Ugh.
And it's not great. But then my other biggest issue with the film is the sort of writing and characterization of the character of Barry Allen himself. Barry is a frustrating character for me. He comes across as this youthful character. I think they may have been writing Barry to sort of be an example of maybe somebody who's on the autism spectrum. But I don't have a lot of personal knowledge or familiarity with that aspect of human existence. But I felt as though it was like, but did the person writing this have that experience? And I also want to say, I love the writer, Christina Hodson, screenwriter. She wrote Bumblebee, which I think is fantastic. She wrote Birds of Prey, which I think is fantastic. I don't know, we also know this movie has a troubled past and history of production where different writers are coming in, different directors, different, you know, so there's many cooks over many years in this kitchen. So I'm not going to pin the blame on one specific person. It's not the director, it's not the writer, it's not a producer. I think it's all of this. I think it's even them looking at some of the comic book source material. I'm not in love with the storyline Flashpoint as well. With that, I know that's a controversial thing. And people love that comic. So I want to get this all out of the way right now so that you guys can fix this and make it okay. But I didn't love the Barry Allen character. I thought he was a little bit too, almost like Joey Tribbiani and Friends. Too dumb to be real. Where I'm like, you're too dumb. Dude, there's no way you are like a smart young professional with your job in like forensics, whatever, science. But like you lack some of these specific skills. But again, I know but they're trying to maybe do somebody who's on the spectrum and might not have specific social skills. And I'm like, okay, but that did not seem authentic to me, and it did not seem like I just couldn't buy Barry Allen when it was supposed to be a mid to late 20s professional. Then we meet the 18-year-old Barry Allen, or the like the younger Barry.
Young Barry,
and even that was like, this is like
much like young Sheldon.
This is like levels of Shazam, where I'm like, I don't believe that the writing for any of these kids is real. Do you know what I'm saying? It feels like adults writing young people, and I'm like, it does not sit well with me.
I think you need to have more interaction with like awkward dudes, because I've had a lot.
That's fair.
Let me talk about my whole dating history, everybody.
And take it away.
No, I enjoy this. I now that you're saying this, I totally get it, and it's hard to compare it to as amazing a film as Into the Spider-Verse or any of the Spider-Verses. I'm assuming the third one's going to be fantastic. But I think this was just the right amount of fan service. I think it was sort of just the right amount of homage to a comic that people love.
Sure.
With sort of its own quirks. I agree that the message in the end was a little bit muddy, especially because, you know, it is sort of heartbreaking for Barry to have to give up his mom and you know, but I think it's also a message about like how shit can go wrong if you hold on to it for too long.
Sure.
Right.
You know, because that's sort of the whole thing. Like I have this theory about how every movie mentioned in The Flash teaches Barry a lesson, and I think when we first see Keaton, he looks like the dude from Big Lebowski, and I think Barry Allen needs to learn to abide. I think otherwise he like gets obsessed, and we get obsessed with the past when we should be looking forward. And I think that's sort of the message. And I agree that it did get a little bit muddied with like fate versus destiny. You can't do anything about it, and that Miles Morales probably had a better take on it, but I still liked it.
May I?
Please, I insist.
I personally, my experience of the film is exactly the opposite of Hector's, which does happen.
Line them up.
And I will
Every
argue, and also we're about to give our scores in a moment, but my score is twice Hector's, which is very funny to me. So I would say that as we both, like I consider Hector one of the people that knows as much about comics as me, which is why I love our takes, because it is opinion and this shows that. But I think it is not only a best example of how to show a multiverse tale through one beautiful metaphor. I really think they nailed a one scene, this is what our timeline rules are, much better than Marvel has flailed to do in the last 10 movies. I think that they not only did that, but they gave a story that subverts expectations in the DC versus Marvel way, where Marvel is underdogs that have to accept loss. That's the whole Peter Parker scenario. That's why he loses an uncle and a captain and Jean DeWolf and all these things. Whereas DC is usually like, oh my god, everything's got gotten right. So if something happens like Identity Crisis, it's crazy and it affects the entire universe because things go right in DC, things go wrong in Marvel. I loved that Miles gets to be his own man, make his own identity. I think that's the strength of Flashpoint, is that the trolley problem is, do you save one person or do you end many people? And a hero chooses to literally allow his mom to die to save countless people, and he tries over and over again. He has every scenario. So the loss of his mother is the most heroic thing someone can do. So it's literally the antithesis of Miles, but it's fate allowing Barry to let go, and you can't solve every problem. So someone that is OCD, someone that is compulsive, someone that might be autistic, someone that has all these things, it's beautiful that that's the hero that has to let go. It's also beautiful that fate, through this one beautiful spaghetti metaphor, shows us that yes, some things are preordained, but also you do have a choice. And I think that's more like life. There is a butterfly effect. There are things that are going to happen, but there's also elements that only change one little thing. You move tomato sauce to save one parent instead of two. He didn't accept fate and let both of his parents go. He allowed things to change, and there were still ramifications. So I think it's really important for people growing up to realize that ramifications to your actions are important, but there's scales, there's shades of gray. You have to accept that some loss is inevitable, but you also have to do the best you can, and that's what heroes do.
Interesting. I mean, was this movie implying that whatever Earth old Barry goes to, where he meets young Barry, that like that Earth is always doomed, no matter what?
Yeah,
that Superman's
sucks.
dead.
Yeah. So basically,
Kara's
like,
in jail.
So that Earth he lands on.
So in theory, Zod shows up and nukes the planet or terraforms the planet,
and it accelerates things because there's no Superman to solve it because of that Earth's fate. But also, I love the Jungian experience of like the hero's journey of Barry meeting the younger him and him being matured because of his experience on our Earth. Our Earth has matured him, so he meets what he was, and he has to have the hero's journey twice. He has to basically see himself mature from young, and also his older self matures because of his younger self. So you get the hero's journey twice, which is the true superhero story in itself.
And the younger self matures because of the experience of the movie, where at the end you think he's going to be the Black Flash, or the evil Flash, and he technically is, but then
because of experience,
they throw in a completely new rule of time travel, where like the one turning evil Barry is like, well, if I die now, he'll disappear. And I was sitting there going, that wasn't established in any of the rules up to this point.
But he's the one that did it, so he's in that loop.
Sure. But it was like Men in Black 3 time travel rules, where like if you really, or most time travel movies, honestly, other than maybe Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which has the most airtight time travel because it's not really time travel. It's just like everything that happened. Like it's literally like it had already happened. But every time travel movie I know has these issues.
Bill and Ted, though, that's airtight because everything that happens actually happened. Like that's why they're like, afterwards we got to remember to go back and do this thing.
I'm still a little confused on, and this is where the chat can come in and try to help to clarify some stuff with talking about the rules of the Flash, where like when Barry does go back for the rest of the movie and meets Keaton and everybody, like is that supposed to be another reality? But Barry thinks he's gone back in time. But is it another reality in the same sort of like multiverse rules of there being different superhero realities like we saw in Avengers Endgame or across the Spider-Verse? Or did he actually F everything up and change the actual like DCEU as we knew it to now where it's like, no, straight up Ben Affleck Batman has now been
George is older than Ben
replaced.
Affleck, so I imagine it's different times. So it's an Earth. It's like an Earth 4.
I think it's
different Earth. It's a multiverse. Barry does initially think he traveled back in time, but then
at the end of the film, I know it's a joke and I love it and it's very, very funny and I think it's great when Clooney shows up.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, then did Barry just come back to the wrong Earth?
Yes.
And that's why
it's like Planet of the Apes, like it's Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
That's why the post-credit scene of like, there's always one of you. Like the Nexus being here is Aquaman that he has to find in order to explain the fact that he's lost with all the Bruces.
Yeah, instead of Abraham Lincoln, it's George Clooney.
right, which is better. Instead of Abraham Lincoln,
I took
Abraham Lincoln.
The end of the movie to insinuate that like the Snyderverse lives on. Barry's gone now, I guess. Like, never to return. And maybe wherever he is now, there's another Barry. I don't know.
I would assume there's a depowered Barry somewhere.
I think he can get back.
I don't think.
Or Barry's both Barry's time traveled.
I don't think it really matters. I think the important thing obviously is like how these characters are changed with this story. I think that maybe a later movie may or may not address this. It doesn't really matter. I don't think that James Gunn's Batman: The Brave and the Bold, directed by Andy Muschietti, is going to say like now we're on this Earth and it doesn't need to.
Okay.
But I'm just kind of bringing this stuff up as a way to sort of. I was just a little bit. I would have liked a bit more kind of clarity, I guess, with the rules of the thing, including. I didn't know that Flash had this sort of like electricity power, but then again, to go back to my understanding of the comics, my knowledge of the comics is that the Flash mythos has always been a little bit kind of vague and magical to me, with everything revolving around the Speed Force. There were times where I'm like, I didn't know what Flash can do and what Flash can't do. What I really liked about this movie is that we actually got to see molecules vibrating and the Flash doing the phasing. Because I'm like, that's a great visual representation of that
beer
classic
joke was
Flash.
so funny.
You know, absolutely.
I will say, what I would love to see happen is that we never see this Barry Allen again. And then, like, when we're all 90 years old, there's a new DC movie that comes out, and brand new people, and all of a sudden, like, something happens. You hear a little zap, and then de-aged Ezra Miller comes out, and he's like, how did I get here? And like, only the 80-year-olds in the audience are like, yay!
Yay!
He's in the 1993 just for us.
Just for
us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I will say I think the movie did a good job writing-wise of, kind of explaining some things without over-explaining some things.
And I
especially for folks who haven't, like, maybe checked in.
I really enjoyed the Michael Keaton explanation of the spaghetti.
Right.
That
was great.
So succinct.
Like, afterwards, I was like, well, I don't know if that makes sense to me. Like, I don't know if it makes sense to me, but I thought the explanation of it.
I don't need everything to make sense.
Some things are parallel, but then things in the past or in the future will break. And when he did the unbroken or uncooked spaghetti and that thing where he was like, you changed here and changed everything in the past, I thought was a good justification for no more Ben Affleck in this movie, but instead an excuse to bring in Michael Keaton, because why not? Because Michael Keaton's that good. That of course you're gonna do that.
And time isn't linear in our reality, because if you go up a high enough mountain or down enough, like, we know that time isn't linear. So I like the idea of the retrochronal explanation.
It's true. I just flew in from Australia, and I
different time.
The same day I left.
You have it
magic.
And I do like that all of these time travel movies take a moment to shit on Back to the Future. You thought that time travel worked?
Eric Stoltz joke was so good. It was so good.
It was really good.
Big ups to Eric Stoltz there.
Yeah.
Well, you might think the writing in this movie is bad, but look at us talking about it. Here it is. Having a full discussion on it. So I'd like us each to go through. I want you to give your score, but I want you to give me at least a sentence on why you are giving this score. We know Hector's low. Do we start with Hector, or do we save him for last? Start with Hector? Okay.
Hector's switching the bit.
We'll start with Hector.
I'm
Hector,
chomping and champing to get to this bit.
Give us your score and why you gave it that score.
2 out of 5. The reason is 3 or 2.5 is like average, right? Can we all?
Sure, I guess.
This is a world where, like, people consider a C an average. Okay.
But you're saying that a 4.
Have you met people?
But I don't know if a 4 isn't equal to a 5, as a 2 is equal to a 1. I don't know if that's...
I go
we
5,
need
A+,
to let's spend
4B.
the next 40 minutes.
Let's get some spaghetti. Let's get some spaghetti.
My
Alright,
score
Bruce.
is 2 out of 5. At the end of the day, I didn't enjoy the way that Barry Allen was written. That was my biggest...
Young Barry was very annoying.
Really, just too much.
That was a point that I liked about it. Do you think back to I think back to myself at 25, and I'm like, ugh.
And he was 17.
Yeah, like, I just think back to myself at that age, and me now would be like, I am going to smack you. So if Barry had gone back and been like, this Barry's awesome, let's hang out, that would not have been realistic.
Yeah. What was your score, Gina?
My score was a 4 out of 5. And I will say, because first of all, I'm pretty easy to please, but I enjoyed this movie. It gave me the right amount of fan service. And so therefore I think it was good. I left it being pleased, and that's why I gave it a 4.
Okay. Coy, what was your score?
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I believe that it was funnier than I expected. I laughed aloud a lot more. I think it's maybe one of the best second acts of any DC film. I was very, very enthralled in the pacing and the speed and the writing. I thought it was one of the best explanations of multiverses I've seen in a decade of multiverses. And it overall had the most to do, I think, of any DC film of late, because it has to blend universes. It had all these reshoots. It had to do the impossible, which was introduce Supergirl in a movie with 2 Batmans and 2 Flashes. And I was so invested in Sasha Calle's take on Supergirl, even with minimal writing, because of what it was able to balance, that, like, I would take the Sasha take on Supergirl in Woman of Tomorrow, even if that messes up continuity, because of this movie's ability to juggle Snyder, Burton, and everything else. So I thought it did the impossible well enough. It's not a 5, because there are certainly flaws, and there are certainly things that felt like it had to be rewritten a few times, and there are certainly things that definitely, like, warp your sense of suspension of disbelief, but overall, above average for me, a nice solid B, 4 out of 5.
Lovely, lovely. And me, myself, and I give the film a 3.5 on the old writing and story. I did enjoy a lot of it. it's late to the multiverse game. It was supposed to be early, this film, and then a lot of other movies about multiverses have come out since. I did enjoy its like kind of fresh perspective on things. You know, I love the spaghetti analogy. That's great. All the Michael Keaton stuff. Though it is weird that Bruce Wayne goes around saying, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts all the time."
That drops.
No one knows what he's
because that's
talking
the thing
about.
Batman would say. It's
But
like Bruce Wayne said
What
the
is he
Joker,
talking
which
about?
made sense in that context.
And also, that delivery is great because he's kind of tired when he says it.
Right.
Like, it's like in the original when he's like, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And then this time he's like,
But it's a Bruce Wayne line. It's not a
Not a
Batman line.
and it's not any
very
sort of like
weird.
iconic line, and it doesn't make sense because he says it to the Joker, which makes sense in that context. It
It's
didn't
very
make sense.
weird. But I do like.
But I felt a rush.
One thing I did like about this story is I love the idea that Flash has created this villain by taking a version of himself that was never going to have powers, forcing them to have powers, and then that creates the villain that creates the whole problem. It was fun. Did it look like a Power Ranger villain? Maybe a little bit. But overall, it was a little fun, and I enjoyed that. What are some things some folks in the chat are saying? I tried to copy and paste a couple real quick. Donkey Teeth Bite says, my biggest question is Supergirl as badass as she seems, and will she be back? For anyone who's read the Supergirl comics, was this a good representation of a Supergirl? Not blunt.
So Supergirl in the comics to me is a really hard character because you are living by nature of the character referencing Superman, and that's not fair to the character because that's the character. She's always trapped in the shadow of her cousin, and I love that this Supergirl didn't feel like that. At no point was I like, wish that was Cavill. And in the comic Flashpoint, it is Superman, and I love that Sasha Calle not only felt like she had lived on an asteroid like Kara did, not only felt like protective of Cal like Kara is, not only did she have like an understandable chip on her shoulder because humanity had only treated her poorly, but to me, in a few scenes, she represented the S standing for hope more than anything I've seen in a long time, because even though she had all that happen to her, Kryptonians are good by nature, and she goes, Zod's not my people either, and she forms what a Kryptonian is to me in no time at all, and she also still isn't like waffly. She's not a wallflower. Like Sasha Calle was Kara to me, so I adored her.
Yeah, I think that every previous iteration, the Helen Slater one, the TV version, there aren't a ton because people are awful and they don't want to see women in superhero roles. But like, I think that this was the first Supergirl that I was afraid of. Like the other ones are always like very sort of like sweet.
Yeah.
Like and that's an iteration that I love too. But I love that they looked at this and they said, this has been done before. Helen Slater is very sweet and then she fights. And this was like, okay, they introduce her in a way that's like, oh crap, like she is messed up. And then she gets her powers, and I was like, okay, I don't want to, I'm not going to look at this woman weird because she is going to punch my butt into the sun.
So you got to be nice to her.
And it never went Homelander. It never went so far that it felt like the commentary on Superman.
And it was really great to see an actor like Sasha be able to play the version of Superman that actors like Henry Cavill have been able to play. This really serious, dark, injustice, video game, scary, spooky threat. And she did a great job, but like you guys are saying, like she also had those little glimpses of compassion that she may have inadvertently auditioned for the Supergirl movie that they're making.
I hope so, man.
And
She'd be so good at Moment of Tomorrow.
She did a really good job because James Gunn has said that Supergirl, she's also really, really brokenhearted over the loss of her home planet, which is different than the Melissa Benoist or the Helen Slater Supergirl. So I think Sasha could do it.
Also, Woman of Tomorrow takes place in a world where she's mourning the loss of something the entire time. Almost like a whole universe ended. This could work in the canon they just built. They could have her play this Supergirl tomorrow.
The interesting part about this character has always been that she remembers the home she lost, whereas Superman
she speaks
does
Kryptonian
not.
fluently.
Yes, Earth is truly Superman's home, whereas she is reckoning with the fact that her home no longer exists, and now she's on this new planet. And I think sometimes we forget that because she's always portrayed as younger because there's science things that happen that she ends up being younger.
We love science, especially Kryptonian science, which was able to kill baby Superman. Adorable.
I like that plot point a lot.
And real quick, it's Kelly's in the chat confirming that they love awkward people and didn't like how Barry was.
Okay, they love awkward
people in real life.
Okay,
but to defend awkward Barry a little bit, I do get a man who's moving so fast through time and space and also has to deal with everyone telling him his dad killed his mom, and he knows for a fact he didn't.
Yeah.
You know, that would make me a little annoyed.
People
and
telling me
that
to talk slow drives me insane, and that's one aspect.
Way too long to make that bagel. That was just
Madness. It
All,
saved a
all
lot of
food
babies.
scenes
All
in this
defend.
movie
15
make
minutes.
me furious.
all defend.
Also, the dark humor of Baby Shower was so funny.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Baby Shower. Okay, our next category is grading the visuals, folks. Let's talk about the visual aspects of this film.
These scores not great.
This is
No, they're okay. But again, mine's the lowest. So I feel like a jerk.
I will say, I mean, starting the movie off with the baby shower, literally, they made the joke too, was like very strange, and it was a very long
Very
sequence.
ambitious.
I loved
Very
it. It
ambitious.
was
Me too.
so
I was
weird
so
and
in. I'm
wacky.
like, this movie's
It
mine.
set a tone where I was like, he is saving babies from the sky as they're like,
And he's prioritizing calories. I thought it was hilarious.
Well, how about we go through?
baby in a microwave? Sorry.
Why
go
don't you
on.
give me like your favorite visual aspect of this film, and then like your least favorite?
To
visual aspect.
me, my favorite visual was any time Barry is with Barry.
Looked great.
It
Pretty
looked
good.
great,
Pretty good, yeah.
and that's actually why the other visuals were so weirdly disappointing, because it's like, and I've seen this point on Twitter too. If you can do this, if you can have the same actor talking to themselves. And then, like, there's just, like, a normal person standing there that looks like an insane CGI uncanny valley. Like, what is the disconnect here between... Did they get, like, a student to do the rest of the CGI? And they got, like, Mr.
Are you talking about the chronosphere specifically, or just like...
Yeah.
The babies don't look like human babies.
Yeah, I mean, the baby, but, like, I'll suspend my disbelief. Like, you don't really want to throw real babies out of a building.
Sure.
And
If Christopher Nolan made this movie, he'd be throwing real babies out.
Every baby's real and the right age
Yeah.
to the day.
Release the Christopher Nolan
Release
baby
the
cut.
Nolan.
We had
Baby
16 women get pregnant, knowing that they would give birth.
This movie took 9 years to make because we were preparing
Yeah.
the babies.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
a very small window of we've got to shoot it now.
Well,
In
Nolan,
3
baby.
months, these
That's
babies
Nolan,
will be
baby.
too big.
Yeah, I want to. Overall, I think that the visuals of the movie are very comic booky and very not real and very exaggerated. And a lot of the times, I like that stuff. I really like the colorful aspect of more recent DCEU films. Kind of starting with like the first Shazam, really the first Aquaman that had that really neon, colorful thing, and
Yeah.
each movie kind of kept trying to add to it and add to it and add to it. And I like that. The problem is, oops, I spit a little bit. That's embarrassing. The problem is,
We'll take it out of your check.
is that it's still kind of in conversation with the initial sort of Zack Snyderverse darker take on these characters. Meaning, when they designed the Ben Affleck suit, they really did design it to not have bright blue.
Yeah.
And I love seeing bright blue in the suit, but I'm also like, but can we like redesign the suit to make it look a little like, just like when we started to get to, before we get to Baby Shower, seeing Bruce Wayne call Barry and be like, I need you here in Gotham right now in the middle of the day. I'm sitting there going, finally, we're going to see a Batman action sequence in the middle of the bright day.
Loved
we're going
it.
from Batman the Animated Series to Superman the Animated Series. I cannot wait. I was so down for it. And then when we got there, the Bat Cycle looked great. Affleck is there. His voice is there with the VO, probably for a stunt actor, but then sometimes he's in the suit. All that stuff is great. He's doing cool stunts I remember seeing in the trailers, but the suit was so still busy. And so I'm trying to factor in the sort of like costume design of the movie, including the visuals. The Flash, the main Flash Barry suit is very sleek, but I miss the yellow belt. It's like this is the argument. People don't
This
miss
is like Superman with the
Superman's
underwear, right?
underwear because
Superman's trunks are
they're
so
into
important.
underwear.
Yeah.
They like it because it breaks up the coloring.
Yeah.
There's a visual aspect to it that you're missing if you just make it all blue. So that's why they had to bump up the belt a little bit. That's why they bumped up those details. This Barry Allen had no belt, and I'm like, we're looking at this person's genitalia the entire movie.
I'm right
nice
there with you.
abs,
No
but it's
complaints from me.
No complaints, but I'm like, but you could have done a cooler belt. Like he had a belt design on the back.
Yeah.
Barry Allen. I'm like, where was the
When the yellow came into play, it worked
very
because it had
cool.
the texture, it added a
Yes,
little distraction.
Exactly.
yeah,
But
I
anyway,
agree.
back to in the middle of the day,
Back to
the
the show.
CG Batman I thought was like too kind of jarring. My other thing is you could tell that they. And I have a little bit of a post-production background. I know a little bit about how it works.
here we
So
go.
shout out to visual effects artists and post-production artists who work their butts off and who don't get enough time and don't get enough money to finish the jobs. They will prioritize certain sequences over others.
Sure.
We know this. This is why the end of Black Panther, the first one, didn't look that great because they were already spending money on Infinity War, which looked great. So for this movie, it felt like they did prioritize the two Barrys standing next to one another,
Yeah.
or other sequences with Supergirl Supergirl flying or other or anything that Keaton Batman, which looked pretty great.
Yeah.
That means a baby shower does not look great. And I felt like it's such an ambitious sequence to do. When they did a similar thing in Iron Man 3, the Barrel of Monkey sequence, where they threw people out of a plane, they actually had people, like, it was like a stunt team that, like, had done
wires
it. And then they removed the wires, and then they removed the parachutes, and then they, and I know you can't do that with babies. They're babies, but I'm thinking for this
I think people falling out of a hospital has the same amount of
the tension with babies.
as,
those soft heads
what
aren't
they
yet
should have done, or they
yeah.
should
Sorry, I didn't mean to
have
interrupt.
thrown people out and then de-aged them.
in the air.
Or maybe dolls, or maybe I don't know what else could have been done. But it was such an over-the-top, cartoonish sort of sequence, and unfortunately, like even with the dog falling, which then ended up being the entire credit sequence, is the dog falling. That reminded me of like Legion of Super Pets, the DC animated movie that just came out last year or the year before or something, where I'm going, it's so ambitious to do this in the middle of the bright day, to have a dog and babies, and for them to look this artificial. That, when the movie was over, I walked away going, oh man, but that baby shower sequence looked bad. So unfortunately, that's what I think about the visual effects of the movie. The same way with the first Black Panther, looked really great, but people remember that Killmonger
That's the
fight.
thing with visual effects, and I know you know more than most. It's not fair to them.
It's
that
not fair.
There are hundreds of thousands of shots that go unmentioned because of their job being so successful.
You don't notice
and you don't, but then when they aren't successful, it's like, and that's what sticks. That's why my score is a little higher, because I personally went in with that asterisk. I don't forgive the baby shower sequence. Nor do I think the Chronosphere worked for me. I know that it was a visual aesthetic goal, which didn't land.
That's what they said.
You know, I love Andy Muschietti enough to let him have this. I also think that there is an idea behind it where like a certain speed would cause that certain clay aesthetic. It just didn't work for me personally. That said, I know there are 100 scenes that I was fully embracing the fact that Muschietti shot the Tim Burton stuff like Tim Burton. He shot the Zack Snyder stuff like Zack Snyder. So not only were the visuals aesthetically tied to the canon, but he made like a jam page with a bunch of artists. He made what looked like a panel spread where like Jim Lee's in one corner and Coppola's in another. Not Coppola. Coppola is in another. And you see the Francis, but you see the different style aesthetics, and they accomplished it. And then to see Batman fight a Kryptonian and fail because he's just like the Batman that wouldn't have kryptonite, that he wouldn't have had that technology, and it looked like how you would have seen Batman 89 do it successfully. I got to see Snyder merge with Burton and then also get Muschietti's visual aesthetic. To me, that elevates everything beyond the bad CGI, at least to my score of a little higher, because I was immersed in a comic book so completely for 2 hours.
Yeah, seeing Batman go all Independence Day and just fly his ship into the alien ship to no avail was heavy, dude.
Yeah, it was really
that was some dark stuff.
But it was very funny when they rip it, and then someone's like, Bruce, don't do that. He goes, you got it. Like,
he didn't even second guess it.
Very funny.
Tip 4.
He's like,
that's the thing.
He was begging someone, please someone tell me not to fly into this.
Yeah. That's the thing. I should have mentioned this in the last category, but the way that this movie both tugs at your heartstrings, but then also has so many laughs. Like tonally, it might be weird for some people. I thought it worked. Like I thought, like, oh yeah, babies are falling from the sky. Hilarious. Oh my God, funny. We're gonna watch Michael Keaton die. I'm gonna go home and cry.
The scene in the grocery store, like even the visuals there. That's another example of the visuals working.
Right. It is
that
hard
Speed
to
Force,
mix
like
those two.
where everything feels hazy, but also like you're invested in. Like Speed Force isn't real. I don't know what it looked like. I now know what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
and that's an accomplishment because I love that we've had Flash in a few other movies, but he never felt like he got his own time. In the Snyder Cut, we had that beautiful Kiersey Clemens scene, which is I think the closest thing we had to Speed Force to this point. Now we had a whole movie of it where like I can think of an aesthetic for Flash.
I do appreciate that the Chronosphere was very different than just like a portal.
Yeah,
like
it
a hole.
definitely was.
I mean, when he stuck his head through and it had that Thor: Love and Thunder effect of Heimdall's son, I was like, oh no, not this again. And then seeing some of those was great. I mean, I think like Nick Cage looked great.
He did.
And very realistic.
He did.
Christopher Reeves looked great.
I thought he looked fine.
But then I felt like Supergirl, remind me of the actress.
Helen
Slater.
Thank you, everyone.
That was the strangest
She looked
one.
very not great.
Yeah, that was
the
the strangest one to me because, and I gotta say, this whole scene a success to me. Like when I saw like Christopher Reeves, I was like, oh my God, and Helen Slater, who in my opinion never like got her due as Supergirl.
She was at the premiere and it made me so happy. She came out with the cast. She
yeah.
was like announced with them, and I was like, "That's beautiful."
To me, her appearance was the weirdest because like she's the one that's still alive that they can use on set for reference. Sure. She still looks great. And for some reason, she looked the most artificial, which I thought was strange. Like, I mean, obviously Nick Cage is still alive. I hear the giant spider is doing well. But
again, it's that priority. You know that the visual effects artists, and I'm sure the producers and directors that are overseeing these shots and improving them, they're like, Christopher Reeve, can we just plus it a little bit more, tweak it, make it look amazing? Yeah. And probably they're like, maybe accurately considering, I don't know if audiences are going to be looking at the Helen Slater Supergirl as much.
Right,
and unfortunately,
screw you, audiences.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's
I was saying before we went live that like I really would have loved it if this movie took place in the '60s Batman and like Zod shows up. Or like Michael Shannon Zod shows up and it's just like the '60s people being like, get a giant bomb and put it against the ship.
I'd also love to see Ben
I've got
Affleck
Zod
playing
spray.
George Reeves Superman, and then Barry's like, "Wait, you're Batman!" Like he literally is playing the Hollywoodland take on George Reeves.
Ralph's like, "Hold my beer, I've done."
Here's the thing. That was my only complaint about that whole scene. I wanted to see every
Grant
iteration.
Gustin, I know.
Yeah, like I was like, where are all the others? Like the ones that they include, and I realized it's like in Oscars in memorandum.
Yes.
In memoriam thing where you're
like
like,
Grant's
why
still
didn't
alive
they But I was like, put all of them in there if you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
It's
like
the
give me a
same
10-minute scene of anyone who's ever played this
Dean
character.
Cain. Where's Dean Cain?
They can probably do Dean. They can maybe.
No, I want Dean Cain.
It's Lois Mourning, like it's over the set of the tombstone. It's the death of Superman scene, but it's that Lois.
Right.
Like
Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher's like,
being like, I
"Ooh,
killed
died.
him."
Sorry.
Zod got him as a baby. And he died.
Also, by the way, again, very dark way for
The
for
infant did not survive.
That was awesome.
I legitimately
That
was like,
was
damn.
awesome.
I think I said damn out loud when it was like, oh, okay, well, Superman's not there. There's probably some reason that he's
Also,
like, yeah,
they
he's
didn't
not there
have-
because I killed him as
Yeah,
a baby.
they didn't have a baby-sized needle. They used the same needle machine on the baby, and that was dark. That was my biggest fear, that Superman was gonna show up during that fight at some point, and I was glad he never did. And I was like, Superman, we fucking killed Superman.
Yeah.
That is Michael Shannon, so it's so charmingly dark. He's just like, he didn't survive it.
If we're
this is a
talking
baby.
about
I killed a
sort
bunch
of
of babies.
the story and the multiverse of it all, I feel like it's the same sort of conversations with like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where people went to go see it and they were like, yeah, but that's the zaniest you guys got with like, oh, the traffic lights here are red, like,
Right.
like it's like throw everything in there, like
Yes,
do as
one of
much
these
as you
multiverse
can.
movies gonna go to 20 multiverse.
I mean,
Across the
I
Spider-Verse.
agree.
No, Across the Spider-Verse.
It
I think
does.
is the problem now is the
Yeah.
bar is Across the Spider-Verse,
Yeah,
which is
that's
truly
exactly
cinema.
right.
Like they did.
Exactly right.
That
And
one's
even-
like 4, right?
and
They
even
go to
they-
like 4
but
But
movies.
even they're in the
they-
Spider Society.
Yeah.
But those are spider people in that
No,
world.
all the
I
different
want to see the
animations
world.
show-
Once you introduce a cat that barfs webbing,
I wanna go to Catland.
like
Spider Rex.
That's
Yeah.
the
I wanna go to Dinosaur
That
Land.
you're right. That is the bar.
I think that for this film, it was like, if you're going to go for it, what else can you do to sort of celebrate all of DC? And even talking about Superman, Henry Cavill, or whoever showing up or not, there was a part of me sitting there kind of being frustrated that I'm like, I wonder if I've heard rumors that he did film something.
I
that
assume it was
cut.
the opening.
Yes.
I assume
Opening?
they had the whole Justice League. Was my thinking when I was
Right.
watching. I was
And
like,
it's-
wait, I bet there was a subplot where they were chasing someone else through the city. Or
It's
Superman,
possible. Or right at the beginning of the movie says something like Superman's busy or off planet, or like it was like with a volcano. Like
Yeah,
there's footage of him.
I'm wondering if there was-
They showed us little
Exactly. And I get frustrated.
small Superman on a tiny TV.
I get frustrated as a fan that I know some of the behind the scenes
that they bring back
fuckery.
Gal Gadot to shoot something
Right.
to be in this movie, but you cut out Henry Cavill.
and she'd been cut of some cuts I heard, which
Right,
is
or
strange.
that Warner Brothers very publicly was like, well, Henry Cavill's not coming back, and it's like that's such a
And why did they have
bummer.
to if they could let this movie end this universe so
Right.
cleanly?
It's-
There's no reason. I would have loved to
agree,
see
and
it.
I'm not the biggest fan of those sort of earlier DC movies, but I'm still like, well, if you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, just let
Yeah.
the thing. Now, if the argument is, should they keep making Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2 and 3 at the same time as I go, no, I understand how that's diluting the
But
brand.
2 years
and
between Henry
confusing.
Cavill getting a send off.
Or at least a moment like this. It's just frustrating to know the behind the scenes, including all of Ezra Miller's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie and say that that does not affect how I'm watching this movie. It is a bummer to sit here and watch a movie with a person who is allegedly potentially abusive, not being, being basically rewarded for it. And there's jokes in the movie about like, oh, we're not good at mental health. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what are we
Right.
doing here with this movie? Like it just affects the way that I will end up seeing it, and to know the breadth and the depth of what the DC history is in film and television. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen honestly more than just the Christopher Reeve, Helen Slater, like they're over there.
Yeah.
Hector,
It's
no less. That's the
Well, and if
I
you're
guess.
gonna make animated Christopher Reeves, just show us the animated Batman and Superman that
Maybe,
people love so
but
much.
like
Why
I'm
can't
not,
we see that?
I'm not saying I want this, but I think about how Spider-Man: No Way Home. So across the Spider-Verse, in the first Spider-Verse film, I think they do multiverses beautifully, and it factors into their story so perfectly. No Way Home had the challenge of, well, we're going to try to do what they did, except we have the advantage of we've got Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and the villains. We have that.
Yeah.
Nostalgia in your hearts that the animated stuff hasn't done yet. Maybe they'll appear in the third one. But the point is, No Way Home, instead of just doing the sort of cameo moment shot where you see them, they brought in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to be a part of the story. You can't do that with Christopher
But Affleck
Reeve.
and
I
Keaton,
get that.
they did. Like, I feel like that's a
Keaton,
multiverse.
They did. You're right.
So that
Keaton,
I
they
give
did.
them those flowers.
You're absolutely right. It's just me as a DC fan still frustrated that Superman's getting shafted. Do you know what I mean? Like just now in the present that even a Flash movie is all about Batman. Like I'm just still annoyed that I'm like there's no Green Lantern.
I was worried about that
Do you know
more.
what I
I
mean?
didn't feel like it was too Batman-y, and I was afraid of that.
Yeah.
For me
Okay.
personally, when there was so much Flash on Flash, there was so much
There
that
was.
genuinely felt like a Flash movie.
And it was
also,
about
the
Barry
tone
and
was
his
very
family.
Flash.
It was
Yeah.
about Barry and his
So
family.
to me,
That's
I was
right.
really worried in the trailers. It was like, oh, it's gonna be like a Keaton movie. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
Batman
yeah, yeah.
3, it was Flash 1, and I was relieved at that because I love Flash. That said, I do appreciate that this all felt like an Elseworld because I've never
it did.
felt like this Barry Allen is my Barry Allen. No disrespect to the writers, no disrespect to Andy Muschietti, but the characterization that Zack Snyder started, never just like his Superman doesn't feel like my Superman. It's just not my
Agreed.
take.
Agreed.
Barry Allen's an optimist through and through, and he's like a guy with this golden age heart. I didn't ever connect there, but that's kind of why I like the annoying younger one because I do feel like by Flash 6. You know what I mean? The maturation of, and I got to see it in real time. So
It's
that
not like
worked for
people
me.
complain that Spider-Man: Homecoming wasn't like dark enough or sad enough, and you're going, but that's Peter Parker's first adventure. Like,
Yeah.
you got to wait until, and sure enough, by No Way Home, okay, you got what you
Six-movie origin
wanted.
was
This
genius.
is the
And that's what I think they could have done with Flash, and I
Yeah.
think that the Elseworld element allowed me to feel that this was a Barry.
A Barry, but maybe not the Barry,
Not
or
my
maybe
Barry.
not the Flash going forward, whatever.
Barry.
My Flash has always been Wally West.
We've
but-
talked about the visuals too much. We're talking about our scores. We're taking too long.
Sorry.
Hector, what was your low
2
score?
out of 5.
We know your reasons.
I'm
Gina,
sorry.
what was your score?
I thought I was going real low. I gave it
Right.
a 3.
Okay. I myself gave it a 3.5, 3.5.
I went 3.5 for all the scenes that people didn't know were CGI.
Yep.
Yeah, there are some
Right.
great use of I think his fast running is cute, adorable. We have
Yeah.
fun.
There's actually no humans in this movie at all.
Yeah.
Impressed.
We got 3 other categories to get through as quick as we can. But first,
Sorry.
be sure to check out nerdriot.shop where you can always grab the latest and greatest in new Rockstars gear. Right now, you can check out our new line of merch inspired by Secret Invasion. These shirts are so hot off the presses, we don't even have them here yet. Just kidding, we do. We get this one that's got Nick Fury, like a half Nick Fury, a half
I
Skrull.
love it.
One last fight. He's the old man. And we got this awesome shirt, which I'm rocking right now.
Love
Totally not a Skrull. You can go to nerdriot.shop right now and order this. Let people know you're not a Skrull. They don't sell these to Skrulls. Okay? This is how you know I'm
Skrull
not a
would say.
Skrull.
I
I'm
don't know.
Skrullless. No.
It's like a label.
I've never been to Skrullos. I mean, I don't know what the planet's called. Support the channel and check out our great merch options over at nerdriot.shop right now. Check them out. And grab other shirts. We got Indiana Jones shirts. We got Barbie shirts. We got all sorts of great stuff. Maybe still some Guardians of the Galaxy shirts. Who knows? Check it out. Nerdriot.shop. Okay, let's talk about the acting, folks. There is an elephant in the room, and it's the lead actor of this film. But there are lots of other actors and people who worked on this film who deserve to get their paychecks, unlike the Batgirl folks. So they put this movie out. And it has acting in it. There's a phrase of separating the art from the artist. We will do that best we can to do that right now. But yeah, lots of other actors.
Since
lots
I'm the
of actors
highest,
going
may
in
I
this
start
film.
this time?
Yeah, maybe we'll let Coy start since he had the highest
Start
score.
optimistic.
I'm going to start
and then be brought
optimistic
down.
because I went high on this one because I think it's some of the best acting I've seen in a DC film because it has to do so very much. Not only do we talk about the tone and balancing humor and darkness and flying babies and moms dying, but you also have to be comedic in a way that is both cloying because you're meant to find the young one annoying and endearing because you need to like the older one. And the older one has to be a bit of a dick towards the younger one. So not only is the acting impressive because it's one person acting opposite themselves, but it's also one person acting opposite themselves in two completely different points in their lives, and I felt authentically like they captured those different points in that life. And so I loved that what not only did young Barry represent younger him, but it represents an entitled him that never lost his mom. I felt all of that. Older him not only represented more mature him, but a broken him because he had lost his mom. So it anchored the family story. I thought the mom, who only got a few scenes, was so incredible at making me love her. I thought the fact that we had someone have to step in for Billy Crudup because of scheduling conflicts and take over as a dad that we feel for was incredible with Mel's scenes. emotions. I thought that getting to see Michael Keaton back, who not only felt like our Keaton from the 80s, but actually felt like the one that would have given up in his own way, that didn't feel like his giving up was a weakness. It felt like an understandable thing as opposed to being like, screw that guy, was great. I thought that Sasha Calle, who I've talked about and will continue to talk about all year, was one of the best debuts I've ever seen for a first movie. And she had the hardest job in the entire movie, in my opinion, being that we already are invested in Flash, we're already invested in both Batmans, but she had to endear us to her quickly and be a character that is hard to land in any media, much less live action. And all of this with a great supporting cast that somehow makes you believe in this world a bit more than you think you do. And Kiersey Clemons finally getting her time to shine as Iris West, another very difficult character because she has to be a bit of an antagonist in your mind at points because you're like, wait, do I believe that she's a reporter? I believe she loves him. And you see the love through all those moments while having comedic and dramatic elements. I thought the acting was top notch. I was very impressed.
Can I ask you a question about Iris West real fast?
Please.
Was she trying to get a scoop at the very beginning?
I think she's socially not used to having her work and life conflict, and I think that she wasn't thinking of how it came across. Okay. I don't think it was nefarious. I think if she'd gotten a soundbite, she would have taken it. Okay. But I feel like she wasn't thinking of what it sounded like. Right. Is how I read Kiersey's take.
Right. Okay. Because I was like, Barry, don't say anything to this woman.
Yeah.
She's trying to get a quote. She's trying to get a quote.
I thought maybe it would have been, but then as soon as she started interacting with Barry Allen, it was like, oh, this dude. Oh, okay. I like this person is
He's not reading my social.
Not reading right. So I apologize. I didn't mean to. I think that's what it was.
I actually liked it because they usually portray her as like a little bit bland, but very sort of like smooth, like a pretty girl. Yeah. And this was the first time that I was like, she's kind of just as awkward as Barry.
They make sense.
Like I was like, now I see why she would sort of be interested in him. Whereas before in other iterations, I was like, what did she?
Why would she be like, call me?
Like, this woman gets hit on all the time. This like woman, not that she's not gorgeous or anything, but I was just like, she's a little weird herself. Like, so I kind of liked that take. I liked this whole movie's different takes. I liked the acting a lot because it's so hard. I mean, this is the problem that any new Superman actor runs into, any new Batman actor. There's so many different iterations out there. And this is what I was saying about Supergirl. We've seen the iteration where she's very sweet and sort of a little bit like almost too optimistic, almost too whatever, and then this was totally different. And I liked this because we saw sort of different takes on it. Anyone who knows me knows that Batman the Animated Series is one of my all-time favorite series. I have art on my walls. I have coffee table books. It's very weird. It doesn't look like an adult woman who's trying to date an apartment.
That's like the correct adult woman to date's apartment. I disagree, young lady.
But Batman Beyond is also amazing. I almost can't watch it because it's so like hard to see this character as older. And I thought Keaton played this character just the right amount of he's a little bit nuts, he's a little bit tired.
He was a little bit nuts. He did get nuts.
He's got a little bit nuts, but he played it with just the right amount of weariness. Right. But also you could see the excitement of like, right.
He's a man who's seen shit.
Yeah, but now that there's like a new superhero calling him, just when they think he's out, they pull him back in, and you could see the little twinkle in his eye of like, if I die, like this is my last mission.
The You Brought Me Back moment was so beautiful because we got a Batman 3 moment. Like we got that like he did come back. And I loved Affleck's lasso moment.
I like all of it. And one moment we haven't talked about is just again like the bounds of the humor and sort of the heartstrings. There's a moment where Barry is depowered and he tries to run, and it is one of the funniest things. Because anyone who's seen those movies knows that he does this weird sort of wind up that's almost like he's tossing discs out to an audience. And to see that, and he doesn't have any power.
It's just the actor
just
running
watch
around
sort of an average like white dude like running and thinking he's gonna be very fast. It was so funny to me. And I don't know, I was just like, oh, bravo to this performance here. So yeah, I also really enjoyed the acting.
Can they just show like a mom just being a bad mom at some point? The mom is too good all the time.
So good.
It's so perfect all the time.
There's an entire plot about that. And
her spaghetti is questionable. Her excellent spaghetti is questionable. She's not perfect all the time.
We'll save that debate for later in the show.
That's the sixth category.
But like the idea, she's just always like magical mom. It's like too much. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm in a grocery store and some weirdo comes up to me, I'm not gonna be like
with tags on everything. I was like, that man's gonna kiss out her child.
Crying, just be like,
mom.
I was just here to town to see my mom. I'd be like, you're not getting a hug from me, sir. Please stand back.
You're not a mom.
Please stand back. She's gonna get killed that day. That's her death day. Okay, that's her death.
It was
day.
that guy that killed her. He phoned her. He was like, that lady was way too nice to me.
Yeah, she sends like an email real quick. She's like, just FYI, if I die today, this guy in the supermarket definitely did it.
But yeah, lots of good acting in the film. I felt everyone's playing their part pretty well. It was great to see Keaton again. I do love that they did not fix the neck on his bat suit.
So funny.
If you ever seen the famous clip from the first Batman where he has to look up and he fully bends backwards, but he did it a little bit in this movie at one point. He has to look up, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. I love that his technology was old as hell. It was 80s tech. I loved, he still was like asking how much they weigh. All the classic lines.
They also smartly had him not move much.
No.
Yes.
They didn't fall into the trap of like old Samuel L. Jackson in 1995 being like, I'm going to chase down a scroll.
De Niro's The Irishman where he's like, I'm 20. And I was like, good sir.
They have Keaton just sort of stand there and you're like, yes. And instead of him being like, I'm going to go for a job.
When the CG kicks in, it's like, it works and it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't love all the friends that young Barry has that also exist in the modern
Patty
times.
Spivot and the
the
other
one guy with the tattoo. I was like, I don't get, why is everyone a fucking piece of shit in this house?
The college kids.
I almost forgot all about those people. So
I know.
I knew more shitty college kids than you guys did in college.
They are college kids, but I think for me, first of all, Sasha Calle is really fantastic.
She's great. Yeah.
Everything that Coy said with that little screen time, so great. Michael Keaton is, when you see Michael Keaton, to me, I don't want to put down the other actors in this film, but I think to me, Keaton with some of these other cast members in certain scenes, I was just like, my God, Michael Keaton has so much charisma. He is such a, thinking back to like when he was cast as Bruce Wayne, I'm like, what a smart choice, what a great choice. He's so amazing. And I was almost sad that he didn't come up in a time where they were thinking big franchises and long time, because I'm like, the way that they keep using Ben Affleck in these movies or the MCU keeps using certain actors, I'm like, there should have been a great DC franchise starting in 1978 with Superman the movie, going all the way through the 80s and 90s, and Keaton should have, until eventually would have been doing Batman Beyond at this point. But anyway, those two are the highlights for me. For me, the acting was, when I look at Captain America Civil War and how Tom Holland was cast as that Peter Parker, and he feels like he's a 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid. The actor looks like he's a 15-year-old kid. To me, he acts like he's a 15-year-old kid. Hey, Captain. He's so sweet and so endearing that I'm like, when they gave him his own movie and it became this coming-of-age John Hughes-style teen movie, I'm like, he can make that work. He can hold that together. I just don't know if, even going back to 2016 with BVS and then Justice League, if sort of casting Ezra Miller in this role, but then writing the character to be that Tom Holland youthful energy compared to all the other stoic macho dudes in the Justice League, was necessarily what I would have done with a Barry Allen character, or even cast that actor who's probably, how old is Ezra Miller? Early 30s at this point? Mid-30s?
Probably.
To be able to play this, and Ezra looks great for their age, but I'm saying to do that, and then you have the college-age roommates where they do feel like they're 24, they're 23 years old. I hung out with 23-year-olds when I was 23. That's what we all did. They all jammed on their little keyboards and showed tattoos and, were probably hung over or stoned or whatever, and that's cool. But then I look over and there's two Ezra Millers, and I'm like, you're in your mid-30s, maybe. I don't buy this kind of energy the whole time. So my score is, I'm going to give the movie 3 for the great performances, but I just didn't enjoy, again, it just goes back to the characterization and casting, and the whole thing for Barry just didn't work for me, and we have to spend so much time with Barry. Love spending time with young Tom Holland, Peter Parker. Didn't like spending time with this young Barry Allen.
I think this is why a lot of people, when Ezra was cast, wanted it to be Grant Gustin, because Grant
From
Gustin,
the CW,
little baby face, and I've watched it, and he's great. I mean,
he's a delight.
He is great, and I think that the usually like online calls are insane. You're insane, people. But at the time, I was like, yeah, Grant is really good.
At least with the baby face, Grant still has a sort of persona that I think you could buy. Like, oh, you're in your late 20s, early 30s. You have gone through loss in your life. You are mature, but you can still be kind of young and youthful and flirty and whatever. So yeah, it's weird. The CW show, they did a lot right.
What was your score? Did you share your score?
Oh, my score was a 4. I really enjoyed most of the acting.
Great.
Boom. Coy hit him.
I went 4.5 because I honestly thought Ezra was so fascinatingly good, and I consider what you're describing like a casting thing, like more like. And Muschietti came into this with it. He couldn't do anything about it.
But
so,
listen,
4.5.
Patty Jenkins came in with Gal Gadot, who I don't think really wowed people that much in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, but then the solo Wonder Woman movie, amazing.
Yeah,
so Patty was able to get a great Christopher Reeve-esque performance.
I don't think anyone was wowed by Batman v Superman.
No, I will say, when I was watching Batman v Superman and she sort of charged onto the scene, I was like, yes.
Oh,
so I was excited about her.
Speaking of BVS, they still haven't closed the loop on that whole Flash going back in time to talk to Bruce, right?
I think it was supposed to be the Justice League movie, I think.
Yeah, in the Snyder Cut, right?
Yeah.
He does it.
There's a scene in the Snyder Cut that kind of like loops that together.
A camera turns to the camera. A character turns to the camera and goes, "Loop closed." Loop closed at the end.
Check,
We did it.
please.
And done.
My score for the acting in this is a 4. Ezra did a fine job playing 2 different distinct characters. May they never work again until they
This is a 2-hour episode.
make
of
recompense.
Folks, the next scores are up. Once again, Hector's is the lowest. The next category is directing.
This is directing. This is directing. What do you have to say about Muschietti's direction of this film?
Here's what I'll say.
That should have come out 3 years ago.
I've only seen it, chapter 1. I gotta watch 2.
Okay.
But
Too scary for me.
I really, too scary.
Too
I
scary
really
for this
enjoyed
baby boy.
it. And you have to give Muschietti his flowers. They're due, because this movie, my God, has been trying to get made since 1999 or something, 1996. Yes. Different directors passed on it. It was just so troubled, and then everything that's going on with Ezra Miller, like the fact that this movie even released is miraculous.
Yes.
Okay, I get that, but there are certain things that, to go back really quickly to the visual effects argument. There are some directors who are great with visual effects movies and others who are not. And the ones who are great at it, directors like Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, so on and so forth, it's because they still are at the top of that food chain and they have to approve all of the shots. And they still have a vision and they still kind of know visually, visual effects wise, what they sort of want the thing to be. And at the end of the film, thinking about things like Baby Shower, thinking about the Chrono Dome, thinking about certain choices, I'm like, I wouldn't have made those choices. They didn't feel... I couldn't feel it. They were artificial to me. And at the end of the day, that is Muschietti making those calls and approving those, green-lighting those shots and being like, yep, done, move along, next shot.
Is it like Marvel where they like, we started previs on this 3 years ago. Here's your third act. Get us to this point.
Potentially. And it's also just some of the earlier sequences in the film where we haven't kind of kicked into that other reality and met Michael Keaton and everything. Before Muschietti gets to flex and go, here's the Tim Burton-esque shots, here's the Zack Snyder-esque shots, which I think are great. There were still a lot of like very zany, Baby Shower included, very zany kind of fishbowl lens shots where I was just like, this is very cartoony and very, very exaggerated. And it just wasn't vibing with me. And even when we get to the later Man of Steel stuff, I thought it was really cool to set that whole fight sequence, the first Zod touchdown. Right. But then Man of Steel, the first movie, eventually takes that to the city, takes it to Smallville, takes it to...
I think it was a commentary on not having all those people die.
I understand that, but it ended up making that whole thing...
But they all do die.
I mean, the whole planet.
It did look very bland, just the very big desert thing. And I'm like, maybe it could have still looked a little more interesting visually, but still be that location. There's just a bunch of different things that I felt like was, despite having to wrangle everything together, I just was like, I don't know if I would have made that choice. I didn't love that style. So
I liked when the laser made the sand in the glass. That was
that's what that was.
Yeah.
So I will. I'll save my score to the end, but it's the lowest.
It ain't a 4, folks.
Let me tell you.
Yeah, I think that like, it's so hard when you have a movie like this. Again, you have to have humor in it because that's what The Flash is known for.
Right.
But you also have to have those heartstringing moments because his mom is going to die. And also, it's hard because, while it is a Flash movie, it's also very much an ensemble. And so to have to give every character and every actor enough time, because if it had just been a quick Michael Keaton cameo, people would not have been satisfied. So you have to get enough Michael Keaton in there. If you had introduced Supergirl and just have her be like failing and this and that, then no one cares. So you have to introduce a character no one's seen before and immediately make them care whether she succeeds. You have to give the fans enough Michael Keaton. There's also, every cameo also, and sort of the right amount of cameos. And I think that that's one of the hardest parts of directing is deciding sort of in that edit, how much time do we give to each thing? How do I balance this tone? Balancing a comedic tone with a sad heartstring tone, making this a standalone Flash movie that has enough Flash, but also enough of these cameos and new characters and old characters that everyone is satisfied. Not an easy task. So I enjoyed the directing.
I went pretty high. I really think Muschietti did
I'm
what
shocked.
I'm in love with what Muschietti's doing to the point where I think Batman Brave and the Bold is going to be in really good hands because we're getting a Matt Reeves, David Fincher Batman again, and then we're also going to have this really endearing parental Batman with Damian Wayne and Nightwing. I think the right man for the job is the man who made this film because he is able to balance all these tones. I've talked a lot about the directing, so I'll keep this short-ish. But I do think what Muschietti was able to do with heart, with comedy, and all those things is already a miracle. But on top of that, he directed 2 movies. He directed a young Flash movie and an R-age Flash movie, and he had to direct them to remember which of those it was at all times, and he had to make sure Keaton fit in this world, and make sure Affleck fit in this world. So not only is he, like, you think about directors directing acting, that's a masterclass. You think about directors directing tone, that's a masterclass. And then on top of that, you're going from all of these different horror elements, and you then make the brightest DC movie yet, and you're doing it in a world that has to both incorporate a dark Burton from 40 years ago and a light Snyder that has dark tones. You did the impossible, which was made basically an annual comic book that has different artists in it. And I think that what he did was successfully wrap up a universe that's never had a consistency while also making 2 movies, while also giving us heart and comedy. So this is very high for me. I think Muschietti's a genius. I was very impressed.
Side note, in my mind, it's pronounced Muschietti, like spaghetti.
Oh, okay.
Undertone of this whole show. Sketty.
Delicious Muschietti. Yeah, I mean, I will say, obviously a lot to do with this film. I think directing-wise, he made a lot of smart choices where, like, you don't have to be super boned up on the DCU to understand what's going on. He reminds you that, like, hey, mom's dead. He got his powers through a lightning strike. We'll see it 3 more times.
It used, like you guys are saying, it used the rest of the DC universe up to this point really, really well.
Yeah.
Probably better than Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Probably better than, Black Adam.
Yes,
probably
most
better,
definitely.
Like,
it felt like it fit in there.
Yeah,
for one of these like kind of side movies, it felt like it fit in there pretty well. Tactically, I don't think it's wise for Batman to chase the car when you have the Flash. Make the Flash chase the car and you stay at the hospital. But he didn't know the hospital was going to collapse.
Right, Batman's not good at catching babies.
Well, he didn't know that was going to happen. Batman had no idea that was coming.
He's lost a couple
Unless
Robins
Batman set that up.
I was going to say.
Did Batman put bombs around the bottom of that building because he hates orphans? He wants to kill babies.
He wants a lot more Robins.
I will say, knowing Batman, now he has designed a baby catcher. It happened
that's true.
It happened once. So he
Yeah.
was like, I got to go into R&D.
I got a suit. This is my baby
got
catching
a
suit.
baby
Lucius,
catcher.
I got a whole
I have a new job for you.
I got a whole
Lucius.
suit for catching
Historically,
babies.
when trapezes claps, it doesn't go well. So he was like, I'm going to go chase this guy.
Let's give our
What are
directing.
you using this for, Mr. Wayne? Spelunking?
Yes.
We spent a lot of money on this, sir.
Spelunking with babies, and if they fall off a cave,
I'm ready.
you got it, Mr. Wayne.
Let's give our directing scores. We'll go high to low, maybe. Let's start with
4.5.
4.5.
Damn near perfect. No notes.
I myself gave it a 4. Again, like I said, I thought he did a good job kind of pulling a lot of elements and making chicken salad out of chicken shit with this film.
Don't eat that chicken salad. I also gave it a 4. Brandon and I same page for the last 2. 4.
Yeah, I like that. Hector, what do you got, buddy?
I gave it a 2. Let's go to grading the sound and music.
Well, before we do,
Where my score will once again be the lowest one.
I'm trying. I have been trying to look at the chat and grab some choice things.
Sure, great.
Spidey Sensei pointing out, so far 2 movies about a multiverse with a sexy Latina mom. I like where this trend is going. The moms are
Keep
holding
them coming.
together.
Keep them coming.
This was earlier too. Virgos 1312 saying, I miss the Schumacher era Batman suits. Give us those Batman suit nipples poking out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I think in the screen test that Nick Cage didn't his suit have nipples? But they weren't in the
His
film.
suit was so strange.
And you could see his chest hair. That's the best part. You see those
Yeah,
screen
yeah,
tests.
yeah.
You can see it in the movie
It was
too.
a little
Nick Cage's
low
chest
cut-
hair was in this.
Was there a little
Yeah,
chest
there's a
hair?
little chest
Good
hair.
little chest hair?
Yes,
Chest hair's canon.
Digital.
Honestly,
chest
his
hair.
costume sort of looked very like Scarlet Centurion. Like if you go back and look at it, it looks very Scarlet Centurion.
Yeah, very shiny.
Yes, very shiny.
I also think Batman's suit, Ben Affleck, Batfleck, his mask makes his face all scrunched.
There's definitely like a mouth thing.
No, that's just how he looks.
He's just got such a commanding jaw. Like Ben Affleck's
Fat
real
face.
jaw is so superhero-y. It's hard to like.
I'm in love with Wonder Woman, don't tell me. This is like crazy, dude. Crazy. Okay, let's talk about the sound and the music of this film.
I'm second guessing my score.
I couldn't remember it when I had to give the score. I don't remember music in this movie at all, except for the Danny Elfman music when it would kick in.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. That's what I was grading. That's all I graded on because I was like, I don't really remember.
Does Flash have a theme?
So Flash's theme I thought was good at being emotional and
sing Flash's theme.
Yeah.
But it's good. We cried or got emotional, which is success. And then I also think using the Tim Burton not all at once and then saving it was genius. I loved the needle drops. I think the needle drop in the desert made up for the fact that it was in a desert. I really was like vibing with the.
What was the?
It was it was the Raconteurs or White Stripes. It was like a.
Was it that one?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I think it was a White Stripes. So it was great.
I thought it was getting through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to get out of the rain.
So I liked it.
America.
I gave it a higher score, but I thought the score was good. The soundtrack was good. I thought the sound of the Speed Force was cool and exciting. I really think that the sound design worked. At no point did I question hearing them. I saw Across the Spider-Verse at an early screening before the premiere. Could hear everybody. The premiere couldn't hear everybody. I hear they fixed it, but I didn't have that problem here. Like everybody was, hearable.
I could hear everyone.
Good
low standard for the film.
Good sound
and the music things.
Good sound effects, good sound design. I also once again have the lowest score. Only got a little bit, but it's
giving away the goose.
It's because of what you guys are saying. Like it's the notion of my test for this is always this. I love to put on superhero movie scores and then read comics associated with that superhero movie. If y'all haven't done that, do it. You're
Hector taught me that years ago. It's good.
It works
some mushrooms,
when it works well.
Get your headphones.
That's level
perfect. 3. But here's the deal. Some great superhero movie scores, and I'm thinking about like Spider-Verse by Daniel Pemberton. Those scores and those, those themes and the what they do to it, or even like to go to the TV side, like I loved Loki's score. I thought was fantastic. Natalie Holt did such a great job with that. They're so specific to those characters. You listen to those movie scores and you go, well, that's a Spider-Verse film. I don't know what track this is. I don't know what part, but that's Spider-Verse, man. That's Daniel Pemberton Spider-Verse, or that's Loki, or that's Avengers, or whatever it is. And I re-listened to the score for The Flash. It was released today fully. They had a few singles out the past week or so. I re-listened to it today and read a Flash comic. And as I was listening to it, Benjamin Wallfish did the score. He also did the score for Shazam 1 and 2, which I liked the first Shazam. I thought the second was okay. But I think it works for Shazam because they feel like generic superhero movie scores. But Shazam, it works because I'm like, that's a kid's idea of being a superhero that's kind of a generic, like I fly and I have super strength. What do I call myself? Captain Finger Thunder or whatever. But I'm like, but this is the Flash. Right? Even Blake Neely's score for the CW show, I've listened to that and read Flash comics, and it has this energy in it. I'm like, that feels like the Flash, and it really fits with the comics that I read. I put on the Flash movie score, Benjamin Wallfish, it sounded very generic. Then the Tim Burton stuff comes in and it's rad. Sure. But I'm like, but then I'd just rather listen to a full Tim Burton Batman score if I'm reading a Batman comic. Like, that's perfect for that, too. So I gave it the lowest score, and should we just say the scores now?
Yeah, you could do your score.
3 out of 5.
Ooh, okay.
You know what? Benjamin Wildfish seems like an old school Batman villain.
Yeah.
Who, like, his name happens to be Wildfish.
I'm going to pull some bonus, guys. You'll see.
I'm going to tip the scales of justice.
Nicely done.
Something happens and he like sort of half mutates into a fish. And
I'm in for the
then you're
gill
just like,
of it.
wait, your name before you were a fish man was Wildfish?
Wildfish, that's right.
I'm going to spawn some crime.
What's the problem?
You'll be swimming upstream, Batman.
Good luck.
I'm on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
I gave it a 5, the highest score, because...
Whoa!
And here's the thing.
Hook, line, and sinker, Gina.
Like shooting fish in a barrel. Benjamin Wellfish, the music meister.
I quit.
Sorry.
Would Benjamin Wallfish be like the singing bass on the wall?
Oh,
that's
I
a
hope
wallfish.
so. Yeah, that is.
I might
Is
even
it Wallfish or Wildfish?
I don't know.
I might have even mispronounced it. But I'm sorry, Gina, you were saying about your
now
5
I need
score.
to know more about Wildfish.
But-
It's purely based on the Tim Burton
The Danny
score.
Elfman?
Yeah.
Yeah, like purely based on Danny Elfman. I remember nothing else about it.
It is
but
Wallfish.
I was just like,
It's Wallfish.
I like nostalgia. Put it in my mouth.
Did they do, by the way, I'm trying to remember, did they do any of the John Williams Superman theme during the
I think I heard it a little bit.
It started to rise as they cut to the other planets.
Give me that sweet nostalgia and nothing
They
else.
played whatever they could get away with for free.
Yeah.
I love the score. I love the use of Elfman. I love the crescendoing into Elfman, not just blowing your load too early. And I think that the needle drops worked for me, so I gave it a 4.
I'm concerned that I have a higher score than you.
You know what? I love things, but I did have Hector's issue with I wanted a more iconic to him, so it couldn't be a full 5 for me. But without that, still a 4 because of the rest.
Like when I can recall like Jamie Foxx Electro's theme music, and it's the character Electro, Max Dillon from Spider-Man comics, but that's so perfect for that.
So good.
Like it's very iconic now, right? Like
the Junkie XL Wonder Woman is I think the best in the DC universe,
right?
The current one,
but I can't do that for the Flash.
When Wonder Woman showed up, they played a little bit of her music.
So good. See, I like those uses, so that's why it's a 4.
It's just because the Flash soundtrack is so fast, you can't hear
all
the notes.
That would
play
be
it at
smart.
half speed, see if you love it.
That would be smart if you go to Spotify and it's the playlist and it's like, and that's it.
You go, what?
That was the whole movie.
That was me, Benjamin Wellfish. I asked Spotify to do that.
The early fish sketches the lamb. That's a bird pun. I gave
my nemesis, the bird.
I gave the score and music a 3.5 because I couldn't really remember anything besides the Batman stuff. But when I was watching it, nothing really like took me out of it. There was never. It wasn't like when you saw the Watchmen movie and you were like, Jesus. When like the songs were so on the nose and stuff like
the
that.
lyrics are like describing the plot.
Hallelujah. It was like that a lot.
I mean, that's how 80s cartoons were.
But I love the Smashing Pumpkins song. It's just funny because there's so many plot-based songs in Watchmen.
Yeah, that's a wild one. But yeah, it wasn't anything bad. It wasn't anything like super memorable. What is the Flash's theme? Call in if you know. Hum it on the answer machine for us. So if we combine all of these scores, even Hector's,
grading on a bell curve.
we grade on a bell curve. That gives us a total score of a 71 out of 100.
That's good.
Which isn't
That's
terrible.
high.
And again,
Minus.
I think this was one of the better of the DC EU movies, if we're calling it that. It's a great beginning to what the DCU will be. I do think this movie is establishing, in my mind, that this version of The Flash and a Jason Momoa Aquaman will be in the DCU.
It'll depend on next Monday's box office.
Well, and I think I think this Blue Beetle movie that's coming out, there's no way that's in Snyderverse, right? That's definitely going to be in the DCU.
The first DCU character is Blue Beetle. The first DCU movie is Superman.
Okay.
Is what he said on Rosemary.
But it also depends. Again, it's like you can have a movie that exists in 2 different franchises. You can do that. But if the Blue Beetle movie, when they're talking about how Batman's a fascist, if there's any imagery and it's like the Ben Affleck Batman or the Ben Affleck Batman Batarang, like it's on Shazam, or Superman. Oh, the day Superman saved the day, and it's the World Engine. It's like, okay, well then it is in the DCEU.
Yeah.
But they also still want to technically put it in the new DCU moving forward.
And the DCU is not going to be as connected. So I don't think Swamp Thing's
going
to
to
be
Also, if that box office is awesome, it's canon. They're like, it's in the DC.
And then we finally get Crisis.
DCU. It's in everywhere.
How come they couldn't get Christian Bale Batman to show up? What do you think?
He said he only worked for Nolan.
Only would do it for Nolan?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we'll see how Oppenheimer does, but I'd love to give me a Dark Knight Returns Nolan.
We'll see.
That was already Dark Knight Rises.
I know, but I want him grizzleder. He was only leg broken. I want him.
That's why I think Michael Keaton was jumping around in his kitchen like karate chopping people.
Because it was pretty
Because I'm like, did we just do too many Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah, no, that's the issue.
We've done it too many
Dark
times.
Knight Returns had to be 70% No Man's Land, and therefore it took away some of the Miller of it all. And I think that the No Man's Land overpowered the Miller, and I would love to see him talking about people slicing dicing. I want to see that.
But then I'm like, but then that was a little bit of the Ben Affleck in BVS.
True.
So
We've done a lot of
you could
returns,
not
good point.
have Michael Keaton show up with short hair but with a mustache. They give him the long hair and the beard. They're like, we just have to make it different than a Dark Knight Returns.
But
comic.
in 20 years, Bale as Beyond Batman would be incredible. I would love that.
It would be tough for him to tell Terry McGinnis not to kill people when he's killed people. It's messy, y'all. I don't know. Clean reboot? I don't know.
Crisis.
I mean,
Crisis.
Michael Keaton Batman killed people.
Oh, yeah.
He's a murderer.
He said, do you want to get nuts?
He killed the Joker.
Nuts.
He killed the Joker. He gave a bomb to that clown and kicked him down a chimney.
All that's left is that laughing bag. That's the only thing left of the Joker.
The laughing bag. That was great. Tommy Bot rolls out in the chat asking, Brandon, is this episode chuggy? I think it is. I think it is,
I
folks.
think you pronounce that right.
How do you pronounce it?
Chuggy.
Chuggy. Now that's chuggy.
Wildfish.
One final reminder, folks. Secret Invasion is coming. You've been warned. Our Easter egg breakdowns will be coming out on Wednesdays now around noon Pacific. Get ready for that. It begins next week, next Wednesday, the 21st. The show has so much packed into it. Like we said, there's crazy conspiracy walls in the background. There's signs in Russian and other languages. There's
Russian
people,
for Eric.
there's aliens pretending to be people. Who are these people? You're not going to want to miss what Eric has to find out, what he discovered in all these little 300 rewatches of the show that he does like a maniac.
It's a den show,
so be
except for
sure to
Eric's
tune in for those every Wednesday. And right here on the Breakroom channel, we'll be doing Inside Marvel, so do not miss that. Doing the after shows. That'll be on Wednesday mornings. You're not going to miss that at all. Check out nerdriot.shop. Get some hot new Scroll merch and some of the other awesome merch we got there. But that's it for us today on the Breakroom. Man, we talked about this movie, folks, didn't we?
Almost the runtime of the movie.
Make sure to give us a follow right here on Twitch and subscribe to the Breakroom channel on YouTube, where you can catch cutdowns and replays of all of our streams, as well as exclusive content and celebrity interviews. Next week on the Breakroom channel, we've got a lot going on, a lot of fun stuff happening, so be sure to tune in then. We are so excited for Secret Invasion to get started, so don't miss it. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Hector, Gina, and Coy, for being here. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Adios! Latest skaters, have a good night.